Hello everyone, I'm David Murphy, President of the Marshfield Medical Center Credit Union, and welcome to episode 9 of the Credit You Deserve podcast. Once again, I am joined by Breanna Butler, our marketing guru, and today we're going to talk about my experience at the D program. So Breanna, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, I'm excited to hear more about this program because ever since you got back, it's like I've heard little hints about what it is and how excited you were to do it, but I really don't know much about it.
Yeah, I will be honest, I did win a scholarship, and I'll touch on that a little bit later during our interview here, but I've known about the program for probably 6 to 7 years. I knew a bunch of colleagues who have gone through it, but yet there was a little part of me that said, I've been in the industry for 20 years. I don't really need to go back to the basics when it comes to credit union stuff. But let me tell you, I was proven wrong based on my week's worth of experience. So yeah, we're gonna dive in and just talk about what the experience was like. And so ask your questions away.
Okay, so start with explaining what exactly it is that you did. So from what I know, you went to Madison and you attended classes.
Yes, so thanks to one of credit union family's big partner, if you will, True Stage. So the credit union actually took a tour of the True Stage Lighthouse building back in June of this year.
Yeah, that's
So
right.
that's where we held all of our classes, and they have enough meeting space where we were able to meet as smaller groups within the full group. And
So how many people were there?
there were approximately 50 some. I don't know the exact count, but I know it was around 50 that we had there.
All over the country.
From all over the country. Some classes in the past have had individuals attend from outside of the U.S., but we didn't have any during this class that actually attended. So we'll get into this a little bit later as well, but there is the United States program, which of course is the one that I just went through, but there are also several international E programs as well. So Africa, Asia, Canada, the Caribbean, European, and Philippine programs are all separate programs that now as a DE, we can actually attend one of these other programs, but similar to that rule for us in the US, other credit union and financial cooperative professionals have to go through their respective program first before they could come to the US, let's say. So we didn't have any from outside the US here this session, but yes, all over the country, we were broken down into groups. We had 9 individuals in our group, and I'm not going to get everyone's state right, but I know we had people from all the way from Washington and Texas and Florida and Michigan and Virginia and a bunch of other places that I'm forgetting right now. But yeah, we were spread out geographic. And then when you go into DE, you leave your title at the door is the big thing that they say. So when you walk in, you don't know who's in your group as far as, are there other CEOs in your group? Are there member service reps? Are there loan officers? You have no idea. You get a sense as you're progressing through the week because as people are talking and you can tell what people's strengths are, you have an idea. But ultimately, the idea is to check your ego at the door and to go in there, being open-minded, and to be willing to talk about things that maybe you're not as comfortable sharing with people, strangers that you wouldn't normally talk about. Just with the idea that we're all there to trust each other in the process and to not let our positions or our egos or whatever take hold during any of these interactions. So.
Okay, so you're in this class with a bunch of people.
Oh yes, sorry. So I'm gonna get
Okay.
off the beaten path. I know a few times here, but yeah. So we were in Madison. Typically, most of the programs are done in Madison. We're fortunate that Madison is kind of the hub when it comes to credit unions. So CUNA, which is currently a Credit Union National Association, they just merged with another organization and will be changing their name in 2024. But for the time being, CUNA had their headquarters here in Madison. For the longest time, True Stage, which was formerly known as CUNA Mutual Group, also was headquartered here. The National Credit Union Foundation, who puts on DE and other similar programs like that, was based in Madison. We've got Filene that's based here. So we're really fortunate that 2.5 hours or less than that away from us is really the central hub for credit unions. So
Right,
yes.
When you told me you were going to Madison, I didn't realize that it was such an expansive program. I thought, oh, it's just for Wisconsin, but I don't think I realized how much of an impact credit unions have in Wisconsin or have as much of a birthplace in Wisconsin.
Yeah, when CUNA was founded back in 1934, they picked Madison as the flagship, and it's, who knows, you got to consider what the times were at that point, but it's hard to believe that, we're almost going on 100 years now, but it's hard to believe that 100 years ago that they picked a city so close to us as the flagship, and it's really remained that way for the last 90 years or so. But yes, everyone came into Madison. We all stayed in the same hotel, which kind of is significant because there was a lot of networking and team bonding and the fun stuff that also happens outside of just the work. But really the days were long. We would start at 8 o'clock. Some of the days we went till 9, 10, 11 o'clock at night. And the emphasis was really put on the philosophy training, ultimately, that we received, and then also the group work that we did. And I'm not going to go too deep into the specifics of this, partly because that's part of the DE allure, is that you don't know, so to speak, yes. You don't know necessarily, you may have an idea of what DE is, but because the experience is so raw and it's just one that you have to experience without any expectations, there isn't a lot of sharing amongst other DEs as far as what the program entails or what you're going to be doing. So that I won't go too much deeper into that, but really it's just a week of that. So we all traveled in on Sunday. We met starting Monday, went all week. Friday was our graduation from the program, and then Saturday we all went home. So you're thinking, okay, well, it's just another week-long conference that we go to, and I've done some of those before, but it's just different. You just immerse yourself in everything credit union related and the core of why credit unions exist during this workshop.
So going into it, what was your goal for? I know you said that you knew a little bit about it, but didn't really know how it would benefit you. What were you hoping to get out of it?
I tried to, just because I know so many people who have gone through the program and told me that I needed to do it, I really tried to go in this without any expectations, which I will say was hard because I had some previous exposure to the DE program through some volunteer opportunities and just in previous discussions. So I had somewhat of an idea, but at the same time, I really tried to let go of those expectations and just walk in as a clean slate with pretending that I didn't know anything about the program. I think there was one person or two people there that I had interacted with prior to ever going to DE. So it really was a brand new experience from that perspective. So yes, I would say that the initial goal was to walk out of there with my designation, which I wasn't necessarily concerned about not achieving, but at the same time, it really was to try to take on and take in as much information as I could. And what I ultimately discovered was that after a week of the program, it led me to brainstorm some ideas to bring back, not in the sense of, okay, well, this is how we can propel our credit union forward, but more, how can we help those who are in need? Because in 2023, you would think that with all the advancements that we've had in society and technology and everything else, that a lot of the core issues that we face would be minimized or reduced or solved. But homelessness is still an issue and food scarcity is still an issue. Those are the two big ones. Lack of sound education or affordable education in some instances is still an issue. So there's still a lot of these issues that are at play that it really gets you thinking, okay, well, how can we as an organization who was founded upon trying to solve some of these issues, how can we actually get back to that?
And that was going to be my next question is, we've talked about the credit union difference before and how the emphasis is really on members. So a program like this that is focusing on, key development areas for communities, right, from what I understand, is it giving you ideas on how to better serve members? Is that the ultimate?
It is, and that's the direct benefit. I would say what I think the bigger picture benefit for going through a program like this is that it reframes or reminds you of who. It's easy for us to say, well, the member is at the center of everything that we do. And I think, admittedly, I will say that doesn't always resonate. Yes, we know who the members that we're serving. Obviously, we are open to healthcare employees, so we understand that industry. And we know that that's who we're serving. But at the same time, we can sometimes forget that in a profession where you've got doctors, NPs, LPNs, techs, and whatnot, that you've got people who are making affordable living wages and whatnot, that there are still a number of individuals who are employed in these areas who do struggle financially, whether it's because of the job or because, for whatever reason. We know that a lack of financial literacy and financial education opportunities is really a hindrance in being able to set yourself up for success. And so I think just making sure that all those concepts when we talk about the member are put at the forefront, and then any decisions, any plans that we make, whatever we decide to do going forward, as long as we're reminding ourselves that that's who we're targeting here, And it's not targeting in the sense of, okay, targeting to make a dollar, but it's targeting to help those individuals. And I think that that's where it's really hitting home when we, now that I've been back for a week and a half from the program, and just as we start to think about brainstorming, we're heading into 2024. So of course it's budget season, and it really is impacting what I'm thinking about doing from that perspective, just because, again, it's more the philosophy, I guess, to remind ourselves why we are operating and why we're doing what we do.
Right, because credit unions are uniquely positioned to help people that are experiencing a lot of development issues. And should I read the 12 development issues that they identified? So
yeah,
so the National Credit Union Foundation identified 12 development issues that are interconnected and act as barriers to the well-being and prosperity of members and communities served by credit unions. So these include savings, credit. Are these all things you've talked about at the thing? Mm-hmm. Okay. Diversity and equity, inclusion, hunger, housing, health, environment, education, employment, transportation, and technology. So those are like the key dozen, right? Were there any that you were really drawn to, or that seemed to really resonate with you in terms of MMCCU and then learning about some of these topics?
I think the hunger and the housing were two that definitely stuck out. We, as I've mentioned already, we know that there are people who suffer from this, but yet we're fortunate in Marshfield in the sense that we don't see a lot of homelessness necessarily. So we were in Madison, and even just walking around the square, you see people are literally sleeping outside in sleeping bags and keep all their stuff right there with them. So it's more tangible. I hate to put it that way, but it's more tangible because you actually see it happening. So I think it's easy in a location like Marshfield to think, okay, well, I don't see that when I walk down Main Street, so therefore it's not happening. But the reality is that we know that affordable housing is a struggle right now. I mean, everyone knows what's going on when it comes to housing prices, property taxes, especially in our area, but just all the costs that are associated with living in an affordable house, factor in inflation, everything else there. So housing on itself is a struggle, but then, okay, well, if you're making, set amount wage and you're putting all that or most of that into your housing, well, then you're deciding between, okay, well, do I put food on the table, or do I pick up a second job, but then maybe I'm neglecting education for my kids, or you're making tough decisions at the end of the day. And so I think those two, they're really the foundation, I guess. We talked a little bit about, and as a psychology nerd, about like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And so if you can't satisfy hunger or need for food or shelter, then some of the other things that come afterwards aren't necessarily on your radar because you're so focused on those two items. And I think what's astonishing to think about is that fortunate to have the Marshfield Area United Way in our backyard. And so the United Way, the National United Way, puts out what they call the ALICE report. ALICE stands for Asset Limited, Income Constrained, but Employed. And essentially what that means is that you've got people who are working full-time hours, 40 hours, sometimes more than that, but at least working 40 hours, but yet maybe they're not earning a high wage, or whatever their family situation is, they're not earning enough to be deemed, they're earning more than what someone who's deemed in poverty would earn, but they're earning less than someone who can live a reasonably, earn a reasonably livable wage, I guess.
They're not going to get ahead necessarily.
Correct. You're always struggling. You're always, so one of these issues that you just identified is always going to be on the plate, so to speak, or on the table. And so what's amazing is that even in Wood County, for example, it's approximately, I'll just say it's over 40% of families are either in poverty or are as households. And again, we think, okay, well, we've got a great employer here in the Marshfield Clinic. And so we wouldn't think that that's really an issue, and it's not just, okay, well, maybe it's the other parts of Wood County, Marshfield's safe. According to 2021 numbers, because that's all that they have out there, but there's approximately 8,000 people in the city of Marshfield who are at ALICE or below. So we know that that's about 40% of our population, a population of 20,000. So we know that this is impacting people that are our neighbors, and they're not always out there asking for help. Or yes, sometimes you see the families who are asking for change on the side of the road or whatnot, but they're not always doing that. But yet they're still struggling to get ahead, as you had said. And so just making sure that we are cognizant of that, and making sure then that when we make decisions that it's not just for that top tier people who, yes, okay, it's nice to have 3 cars in the garage, and it's nice to be able to take 3 vacations a year, and that's fine. We're happy to help those individuals, but there's also a pocket of the population who are struggling to find where their next meal is going to come from, or are unsure if they're going to be able to afford rent for the next month, or now we're getting into the winter months and now we're talking about heating and whatnot. So it's really important for us to just keep that in mind and know that, yeah, I don't know that anyone here in Marshfield would say, well, it's not here at all, because whether you go to church or you're part of a group or whatnot, that there are some who have those struggles. But I think to think that it's 2 out of 5 households have that struggle really was mind-boggling, to say the least. And it's 40%, somewhere between 40 and 45% is kind of the average regardless of where you're talking.
Yeah, I think when you hear a stat like that, and it's like you said, unless it's in front of you and you're witnessing it, you don't necessarily always realize how bad it is. But I think from what I'm hearing you talk about the course, the next step is like this is giving you solutions or tools, I'll say tools, maybe is a better word, on how to tackle some of these issues locally. Would that be a...
It is. We have to recognize that a lot of these are more deeply rooted than what we can fix in a week, right? We didn't get to this position overnight. It's not like everyone was well employed and making sufficient income, and then all of a sudden, a week later, everyone's struggling, or the 40% struggling. We've been facing this for a while now. And so I think it's, there are things that we can do, yes. So one of the initiatives that we're taking on for Christmas this year is that we're working with United Way to provide families with Christmas meals, for example. Free of cost to the families. We're donating the items for that. That helps for Christmas, obviously, but it doesn't solve the situation that they're in, right? And there's only so much that we can do. We acknowledge that, but it doesn't mean that we can't try to fix those things. So it is just acknowledging and recognizing that, yes, there are things we can do on the surface level to try to get through the day-to-day. Earlier this school year, so starting in September, we did partner with United Way to help with their Now packaging, which is the Nutrition on Weekends program that they run. So, and just to hear the numbers coming out of that 3 weeks into school, that there's already 500 kids who are looking at getting meals for the weekends, is astonishing. So we can do our part to try to help week by week or day by day, so to speak. As far as coming up with ways to try to fix the deeper rooted issue, that's the ultimate goal for us. I don't have the solution for that right now, but that's something that we're striving for.
Fix all these issues right now, David. That's what I'm asking you to do.
All right, well then I should probably stop recording this podcast and get to work on it.
But obviously joking aside, credit unions are known for being more, how do I want to say it? I don't want to say more forthcoming about these kind of issues, but they're historically more positioned and more designed to help people of all income levels.
We are. Again, going back to the reason why credit unions were formed, a lot of them, I shouldn't say a lot of them, but you started to see a big influx of credit unions starting even in the early 20s during the Great Depression, because a lot of families were going to the banks, the local banks that they had, and the banks weren't willing to help them for a multitude of reasons. And so it didn't eliminate their need for financial services. So credit unions started to spring up in order to be able to address those shortcomings or those banking deserts, so to speak. In fact, the oldest credit union here in Wisconsin just celebrated their 100th year anniversary in Milwaukee area. So they've been around here for 100 years as well. But in the 30s, then you saw the passing of the Federal Credit Union Act by President FDR at the time, and that really springboarded a lot of more credit unions to take off. So 30s, 40s, 50s, we were founded in 1965, but during those 4 decades, you saw a ton of credit unions that were being formed because, again, they were there to help the average person. A lot of credit unions, if you talk to the staff or the ones who were, if they're fortunate enough, the ones who were around when they started it, a lot of them were, hey, we pooled up resources from 10 people into a shoebox and we gave money to one of those members because they needed it to buy a hammer for their job or whatever the case was, fill a need that they needed. So, that's the grassroots historical reason why we were formed. And might be a little controversial to say, but there are some of us, I think, who have gotten a little bit away from that because obviously there's a lot of items on our plate right now when it comes to liquidity and the interest rate environment and everything else that's going on, and we understand that, but at the same time, that doesn't alleviate the fact that people are still in those situations that they were back 100 years ago where they still need financial assistance or they still need someone to believe in them and to encourage them to take off from there.
So would you say that participating in the DE program that brought back some of that, like the basics of why you do what you do?
Absolutely. So as we started with, thinking that, okay, well, why do I need to go to a week-long program that talks about the basics of credit unions? That doesn't seem like a good use of time, or it doesn't seem like it's worthwhile. Well, when you wrap it into this type of put a bow on it, like from that perspective, I guess, then it makes you think that, okay, well, I understand the importance of going through a program like this, because it's not just the 4 letters that I get to add after my name on LinkedIn and on my email. It's way more than that. It's about re-immersing yourself in, as they say at DE, this is the only thing I guess I'll share about it. It was like everyone says you drink the credit union Kool-Aid, and that's not just a DE thing, but it really is a thing. I mean, we literally don't drink Kool-Aid there, but you really get an idea of like, okay, well, you buy into the reasoning why credit unions were formed. And then the challenge becomes, okay, well, it's great while you're there and everyone's on the same page, which I thought was another amazing part about it, was just the fact that you had all 50-some people that came together and they were all moving in the same direction. They all wanted the same thing. And it's easy while you're in that environment. How do you come back and bring it back home? Because as I mentioned, we all are still facing an immense number of challenges that are present in today's financial industry right now. So it's making sure, again, that we put that at the forefront. And it sounds basic. And yes, I look at it as back to the basics essentially, but it really drives home the point that we need to continue to do what we do. It really is the credit union differentiator. Recently in a meeting that I had, and actually, Breanna, you were in that meeting too, the question was posed, well, why would someone bank with Marshfield Medical Center Credit Union? And admittedly, it was kind of hard to pinpoint why, because everyone says, well, great service and low rates, or better rates on savings, low fees, so on and so forth. And I think, to a degree that's true, but everyone says that and everyone's kind of in the same boat. So to go back to that why, I think ultimately it's to help those who are disadvantaged, but then not just to help them in the moment, but to also help them get out of this situation, I think is really the differentiator. So I think if we can do that, I mean, that's a tall task, and it's one that, quite frankly, we may never solve or never completely finish. But I think if we can start to make dents into that and really help get people on their feet or get them in better situations, however that may look for that individual or that family, then I think that we are meeting the mission. And I've heard stories, and I won't name names, but I've heard stories from some of our members who had those stories where when they were in their 20s and their 30s, they came to the credit union because they needed a second mortgage to fix up their house or whatever the case was, and the credit union believed in them and gave them that chance. And now they're in a position where they have seen the fruits of their labor and they are financially set, but it doesn't take away from the fact that these things do come around in cycles, meaning that now that you're out of that cycle, so to speak, you can turn around and help the next generation who's in it. But also that it just reminds you that, okay, I remember when I was in, empathy is a big thing that we talked about, and I remember when I was in that situation, and I remember the struggles, and there were times where, whether it was when you had kids at home and you couldn't put food on the table, or you sacrificed a meal for yourself so that your kids could eat, and maybe it wasn't that drastic, but for some, you remember those days, and you remember, okay, well, as I'm sure it was hard in the 80s and 90s, so I'm not trying to take away from that, but in today's society with where we're at with everything going on, I think that it just makes you realize, and it makes you remember, and it makes you want to help those individuals even more. So that's ultimately, I think, the goal of what credit unions are, is that I wouldn't say that people don't need credit unions, because that's not the ultimate goal, but it's ultimately that they are able to build themselves up to a point where they have different options, that they're able to feel financially secure, and that they're making choices because they want to, not choices because they have to, so to speak.
So bottom line, was the program worth it?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I'd do it again if I could, but since I've already graduated once, I can't go back through and do it.
And congratulations on that.
Yeah, thank you.
You did want to talk about how you were able to go.
Yeah, so this is the part of the program where I give a shout out to our friends over at the Wisconsin Credit Union Foundation. So back in late spring of this year, I did apply for the foundation's Pat Wessenberg Development Educator Scholarship. So Pat was a CEO over at Simplicity Credit Union, which is just down the street from us. unfortunately, she's no longer with us. She did pass away in 2021. But when she was alive and working her way through the credit union industry, she was a huge advocate for this program. And I actually remember I don't remember which year it was, 2016 maybe it was, but so she was always big on sending one Simplicity, I think maybe it was Central City at the time, but one employee and for whatever reason, an individual couldn't make it. So I remember she called me and actually asked if I was willing to go in that employee's place. And unfortunately, we had an exam, so I wasn't able to make it, but it really touched my heart, the fact that she reached out to someone who's not even at her credit union to see, because she was just that passionate about not only the development for those who are within the industry, but just for the programs like this in itself. So I was honored to be selected for that scholarship. It definitely helped the credit union financially to be able to send me to that. Like we mentioned to start out the interview or the podcast, that being in Madison, we are pretty fortunate that it's just a couple hour drive for us. We don't have to fly in or do anything like that. But anytime that we can alleviate expenses so that we can dedicate those resources somewhere else to serve the members, obviously is key for us. But yeah, I'm really appreciative for the foundation for giving me that scholarship, or awarding me that scholarship, I should say, for selecting me and giving me the opportunity to attend. Because yeah, if I think at some point I would have gone, but this was the kick in the butt to make sure that I went. Because every year it seemed like I would always push it off till the next year. And so the scholarship forced me to say, okay, no, I need to sign up and go, and I'm glad that I did. So yeah, thank you to the Wisconsin Credit Union Foundation for selecting me for that scholarship. I'm beyond grateful to be accepted for that. But yes, to answer your original question, I would highly encourage it to anyone who hasn't gone through the program. What I've learned at DE, and I had heard about this from a friend, but I guess I didn't know too much about it, but there's actually international DEs as well. And so they're, with the other DEs that are out there, and I did mention it earlier, but now that I've gone to the United States one, technically I'm eligible to go to some of these other ones. Where are you going next, Dave? I don't know. That's a few years down the horizon.
I would say Caribbean, maybe in the winter.
Yeah, I was going to say, if I can get in at the right time, then we'll see. We'll see how we can use this to our advantage. But it's it'd be interesting to. We kind of forget, and I know that International Credit Union Day just came and went, but credit unions have a presence in over 110 different countries, I believe it is. Now, they're not all called credit unions. Actually, we're one of the few who do call them credit unions, but a lot of them have some derivative in their name of the word cooperative, again, because we are financial cooperatives. But it would be interesting to hear some of their struggles, because some of them are different, I have to imagine, but at the same time, some of them are the same, regardless of the fact of where we're based out of. So it would be interesting to go through that program. I don't know if that's something I will do or not, and I guess I don't know if anyone from my team specifically is going to be listening, but I'll give a shout out to the Final Straw, which was our team name, for kicking at D this last session. It's a lot of friendships that I'll never forget that I've taken away from that program. So yeah, I would highly recommend it to anyone, and I'm more than happy to talk to anyone, or talk to your CEOs even if I have to get you to go, for
awesome.
Sure.
Cool. Well, I'm excited that you got to do that, and it sounds like it'll be super beneficial for not only you personally, but for the credit union and our community. So I'm excited to see what comes out of it.
Yeah, now here comes the hard work. So we're going to strap our boots on and whatever other cliches you want to throw in there, but we're going to get to work and see what we can do. So,
all right, let's go.
Awesome. Well, thanks for taking the time to walk through the interview today, Breanna. Appreciate it. And her lovely husband, Brett, who is here recording as well, who is the guy behind the camera, so to speak. But thank you to both for being here. And if you want more information, I would highly encourage you to go to the National Credit Union Foundation's website and check out the DE program.
And we'll have a link on the MMCCU site.
Okay, perfect. I do know that they just opened up applications for next year, and they're filling up fast. So the first one's in Florida, but I heard that one already filled up, so you're gonna have to stick to Madison, I guess. But check it out.